In this video, I'll be demonstrating the techniques I use for hemping the tenons and other sections of a drone. First thing we need to do is collect the items that we'll be using. Here you see I have the bottom section of a tenor drone. The old hemp has been removed. This is a good time to check the drone for any defects that you may want to repair or clean out the bore and such. I have a collection of various types of hemp. I also have some beeswax, some cobbler's wax and a little piece of leather, a razor knife, and then a block of granite, which I'll be using to true up the wraps. With respect to the hemp, I have a collection here of, the first one is unwaxed yellow hemp, then waxed yellow hemp, black waxed hemp, and natural 2-ply hemp and natural 1-ply hemp. Now let's select the hemp I'll be using to hemp the tenor joints. First we have the unwaxed hemp. If used, should be waxed, as this hemp will have a tendency to absorb moisture from the condensation in the drone and can swell, locking in the joint, making it hard to separate the pieces, and also, if there's enough swelling, can compromise or break the joint. The waxed hemp, on the other hand, is moisture resistant, but gives you a false sense of security, as over time the wax will leach out of it due to heat from playing outdoors or just the warmth of the player's breath. The black waxed hemp, on the other hand, is very long-lasting, and it's very tacky. And also you'll notice the diameter difference between the yellow waxed hemp and the black waxed hemp. Here are the two natural hemps that I'll be using for part of this wrap. I prefer the natural hemp, as natural hemp is more water resistant or moisture resistant, as advertised by manufacturers, less chances of swelling. I've been using it for a while, and I've been very comfortable with it, and I found that a lot of the claims made by the manufacturers is true. To begin, I'll be using the black waxed hemp on the base of the drone, the tenon that slides into the base drone stock, or the stock. Note that this bagpipe setup is, all three stocks are base drone stocks. Hence, you'll notice that I add more black waxed hemp on the bottom to accommodate the larger bore diameter of the stock that it's going to be fixed to. To repeat, the reason I'm using black waxed hemp on the bottom tenon joint is that it's tackier. It's also less resistant to the wax being leached away from the joint, and it'll lock in better in the drone stock. You don't want your drone twisting around as you're tuning it. You want that bottom piece section to be solid in its connection with the drone stock. We will now move on to hemping the bottom of the tenor drone. We'll be using the black waxed hemp. It is somewhat thin in diameter. Although it's waxed, I take the bottom section that's going to be sticking on the drone and run it through some cobbler's wax. The cobbler's wax is more tacky than beeswax. Some people use beeswax exclusively, or even the wax off of a toilet bowl ring. And then run it through a piece of leather. This heats it up a little bit, makes it more tacky, and sticks to that bottom section. The first wraps of the hemp, you will notice that you have some grooves cut by your bagpipe maker. That's to increase the adherence of the hemp and adding integrity to the hemp joint. Now here, try not to wrap below the grooves. You want some place for hemp to expand. It'll expand on each side of the joint as you're putting it in over a period of time, and will roll. If you wrap all the way down, it'll give you no room for movement of hemp. So try to stay inside the actual grooves or notches. Now when you start out wrapping, stay wrapping in the notches. It's harder to see the black hemp on a dark joint, but you'll feel it locking in. Be sure that you lock this in as well as you can without breaking your hemp as you pull on it. You don't want this to roll and spin around on you. Now here is some choices to make with the subsequent wraps. You notice that I wrapped one wrap right adjacent to the next as I went around the joint. A lot of people stick to that method. One issue with that is that you have a possibility for the hemp to drop in between two sections of hemp and cause bumps and lumps in your joint. That is a prevailing method of wrapping the tenons on your drones. If you wrap with a little bit wider, kind of diagonal wrap to the hemp below, it prevents that from happening. It also gives a place for any expansion of the hemp. You don't have to do it real close together, from binding up and expanding out instead of across. So by wrapping kind of in a helical or screw type method, you'll notice that it gives you some room for expansion across the hemp. And I continue wrapping diagonally. Too narrow. Here's the stock that it's going to go in, and you notice that the stock is very large. The hole is very big. So continue wrapping, again diagonally in a helical fashion. Again, this is my method of doing it. You can do it concentric wraps, which is traditional, but this is a preferred method by me. It was introduced to me by a master piper who uses both methods, or has used both methods. Because this is already waxed hemp, I don't have to continue to add any beeswax or other wax to it. You can if you want to for sticky and tackiness, to lock in the hemp one wrap on top of the other. But you'll find that with time the wax will get warm from playing, also from being out in the sun or outdoors, and will start to leach and will lock in together and bind. When you get to a point that your hemp is above the notch or the wood of the drone, you can, if you wish, to flatten that out a little bit. Take your piece of wood or hard surface and just roll it in. This will make for a little tighter joint right there, and also it will restrict a little bit of the expansion because you're flattening it out a wee bit. But this joint, since it's going to be locked in, the drone stock is not going to be exposed to movement. And when we get to the top section, I'll elaborate on that a little further, what things you have to consider and think about. Again, you don't want to overhemp your joints, and you never want to force them. Forcing an overhemp joint into the stock may cause the stock to split. Even though this stock has a stainless steel ring which helps hold the wood in place, you don't want to overstress this joint. You don't want to force it. You can twist it in. By twisting it in like that, it's very tight, snug. The true test will be later when before you actually put the tops on, to test it for the ability to be able to tune it without the bottom section turning. You can't stick all your bottom sections of your drones in, plug the ends, blow up the bag, and see if you have any leakage. If you have any leakage is going to be then check connection to the stock, to the bag, any cracks, any leaks coming from around the joint, of course any cracks along the drone sections or the top section. Look for any splits. You'll be able to tell if you have any splits in your wood if you look down the end of the stock and check for splits that way. But you should have a nice tight fit. It doesn't want to roll around. As you see, I did not force it, and that drone is finished with respect to the bottom section. Again, you'll notice there's a bushing on the end here. You do not hemp above the bushing.
We will now begin
stops
to
at the end of the
wrap
combing or
the top
grooves
of
on
the
the
tenor
stock.
drone.
And you do not hemp below whatever smooth section you have here. This has a stainless steel sleeve. If you don't have a sleeve, you stop. The hemp stops at the end of the combing. Again, I'm using natural hemp. It has a resistance to swelling with respect to moisture absorption. I still will take the section that adheres to the drone. I will take and use the cobbler's wax. Depending on the cobbler's wax you have and the age of it, it may start to change color on the hemp, especially this natural hemp, and give an appearance that it's loading on there. I can feel that it's on there. I can also notice that the fiber is starting to lay down and adhere to itself. I have some cobbler's wax on this little patch I might not mentioned earlier, and it heats up as I start to run the line through here, and just run it in one direction. It's heating up enough under friction to soak into the hemp fibers. Then before I start and go any further, take out some hemp. You'll notice that the fibers are all kind of loose in there. It's dry. I do take some beeswax to run along the hemp, while the beeswax will definitely make it more moisture resistant, I do it more of a reason for adhesion to itself as I'm wrapping, and not so much so for moisture control or absorption. Okay, we're now ready to begin our wraps. I lay it down. This little tag end is just for me to hold with my thumb. I will be cutting it off later. Then the initial wraps with the cobbler's wax section of hemp are laid down side by side in the grooves, and as snug and tight as I can do it. Lay it on there. Now I'm going to start wrapping in a spiral angle or oblique angle to the hemp below. You notice it's open. The tops of the combing here are visible against the white hemp. Of course, it's it's not going to be covered until subsequent wraps go over it. As the first wrap fell between the ridges of the combing. And here we go. This one is a lot easier to see what I did basically on the bottom joint of the drone. Since I'm still below the sleeve, I know that I don't have enough hemp yet to check for clearance on the drone top. So I can continue to do some more wraps. I might add that I've been using natural hemp now for a few years and am totally sold on its qualities as actually a better way to hemp your joints. Even though I've flattened it against this piece of granite, you may be able to see that there's still some space between the wraps. This is where any expansion that might occur will go against the adjacent wrap rather than pushing out away from the drone section to the bore of the drone. This again prevents any pressure against the drone top and prevents it from cracking it. Getting to the point where I'm starting to feel some tightness there. And actually, I might have got lucky and got it straight away without having to add any more. Rock your drone top like this and you notice I do have some play. So I will have to add some more hemp. You'll notice if you look at the section right here how straight it is, but you'll notice that there is some rocking going back and forth. That tells you straight away that even though it feels like it's a little snug, which it's starting to get there, it's not where it needs to be. Inspect your wraps, make sure they're parallel to each other. They appear to be that way. Keep in mind that wood will change over a period of time, and even though to the naked eye it looks perfectly a perfect bore, you might find that some changes have occurred in the wood. So that's why even if, no matter how perfect this was, whether it was hemped or built up with cork, with musician's cork, you'll find that sometimes there's some rocking going on. Musician's cork, which a lot of people are starting to go back to put on your bagpipes, will swell and hug the inner contours of the bore of the tops, so we'll lock it in. Yellow, dry, unwaxed hemp will, and some people will stop right where I'm at now and add dry hemp to the top, last layer, allowing it to take in a little bit of moisture as you're playing and allow it to swell and lock in place. And it's such a minor amount of hemp that you don't really run the risk of damaging your drone top. A large amount of hemp, though, that would have a tendency to swell could in fact damage your top. So things to keep in mind as you're building up your wraps. Again, I'm to a point where I may want to stop, depending on how it fits, and switch over to the single ply hemp. Let's see where we're at. Now when you're doing your joints, be sure that this is an outer tenor stock, this is the outer tenor drone top, so I want to stick to those. Okay, this is good. I won't have to do any more to this. Now, this particular time, I will go ahead and do a half hitch. You can add some cork grease or wax, beeswax to the outside to make it a little easier to spin, but not so much so it's snug enough to where it's not going to walk its way down the tuning pin as you're marching or playing. So I like to try to tune my drones right there, so I'll adjust my drone read accordingly to get the proper tuning range that we need out of my drones to match my chanter, and I try to keep it right in that area. So my particular drone manufacturer doesn't, this drone does not behave well if it's tuned over a 1/4 inch or 3/8 of an inch below the hemp line. Some drones can tolerate that without diminishing the quality of sound. And I definitely never want to go past the halfway mark on my hemp, which is right about there when tuning. So that makes it for a real weak connection. So right about there, and it doesn't rock. It's good and solid. We're done. Again, what I want to illustrate here is not only that the joint is not rocking, but for tuning, the way I tune my drones is I start with the drone top high on the tuning pin. That's quite high. Why? Because it's easier to pull down than to push up. So while I'm tuning my drone, I can go ahead with one hand and pull down and rotate the drone as I'm doing so down the tuning pin until I get to that sweet spot where the drone is tuned. So see, I'm able to turn that with one hand, and it's not rocking. It's not so tight that I can't do it with one hand. That's the true test. That shows you that the joint is properly hemped. We're now going to proceed with the midsection of the base drone. This section only has one hemped area. This cut grooves, and we're going to be placing, I'm going to be using natural 2-ply hemp in this area, stay between the top bushing and ending at the slide. As with the tenor drone, I start out with some cobbler's wax. Cobbler's wax is very tacky and will help to adhere the hemp to the joint. And then run it through a piece of leather. By the way, the reason for the torch is I've heated up some cobbler's wax in here to make it a little softer. Now, I go to my beeswax, and again, the reason I do this is to pack down the fibers of the natural hemp and make it tackier, so it will stick to the wraps below. Helps lock it in. Again, I don't wrap it like this. I wrap it diagonally, a little diagonally, if you can see that, and continue wrapping diagonally, just a wee bit of a gap between the two, the previous wrap. This gives you a little bit of area to, in the event of any swelling, for the movement to go towards the subsequent wrap rather than swelling out. Yeah, you're starting to form this crosshatch pattern. It's a little bit spongier when finished. I didn't describe that before, but you feel that it's spongy, and that helps to form a seal and contours to the inside of your drone top. While this is time-consuming, it's a very important process for the health of your bagpipe. Properly hemp joint will last a long time, provide a good seal, keep the column of air going in the direction you want it to go. It won't back out over the edge of the joint and then form little eddies back in here, which cause disruption of air flow. You want the air to keep going out. So a properly hemp joint will stay tuned better. The drone top won't start walking down on the tuning pin and working its way out of tune. So I'm just checking. It's getting pretty snug now. Now the difference between the base drone top and your other tops is, for the most part, you're not tuning your drone from the top section. My base drone is left right at that spot, no matter if I'm playing the B flat setup or tuning down at from 466 to 482. My top stays right there, and I'm not choking my toning chamber of my bass top. I'm getting the maximum breath from this voice box, and it's not crowding this chamber, so it gives it the full breath. So while you certainly can use this top to sharpen or flatten your drone, I highly recommend that you do it from the bottom, from your midsection, or some other way with your drone reeds, whether you have a tuning pin in your reed or a plug of some kind. Try to balance your bass drone from those areas and leave your top alone, and you'll find that you'll get the most out of your drone top. Now it's still a little loose, so I'm going to add a little more. If I get to a point where this 2-ply is too thick, I'll switch to the single ply, but I will not use Teflon tape at all. Teflon tape, as I'll show you here in a second, is not really a good long-term solution for tuning your drones, for setting your joints. So, while I can certainly move this, this is too tight. This is very, I can tune it with my hand, but it's very snug. It's not too tight, but it's snug. And it's not very comfortable to tune with one hand. This is where you want it to be. Not so hard where you're having to fight it to turn it, but not so loose where it's very comfortable. It's right out the comfort zone of being, really have to grab it hard to move it. This is a perfect balance point for this section to be at. And because this is not a spot that you normally tune at, you normally don't mess with this spot to tune. So this is, I'll leave it right there, and I have that much hemp showing, and I'm satisfied. Now, your bottom section of your bass drone, of course, is your main tuning section, and that's where you do all your business from that end. Now, just a word about plumber's tape. Plumber's tape, or Teflon tape, is used by pipers the world over to add hemp girth to a joint. The problem with plumber's tape is it's Teflon tape. Teflon is slick by nature. Use Teflon tape as an emergency gap where you just need a little bit of tension on your, or diameter to your tenon of your drone, and that's fine short term. You should be able to remove it if you, afterwards, and adjust your hemp in another method. The problem with hemp is it gives people a false sense of security of being weatherproof, weather-tight. That's not necessarily so. Moisture is drawn in from the edge of the hemp, and it wicks down through the hemp on either side, especially your yellow hemp, your regular hemp. It does have quite a bit of a wicking action. As it wicks through there, it'll swell, and it can also dry out when moisture no longer tends to be present. Teflon tape wrapped around here will, on the edge, will start to split and it'll open up. This part that's in contact with the inside bore of your drone top, or your drone, won't bring in the moisture. It's bringing it in from the edge. It's wicking in and swelling. And sometimes it'll cause a creep because the Teflon tape is slick. That's what Teflon is. It's a lubricant. So it's a lubricated surface, a slick surface. So, not saying not to use it. You can use it with synthetic parts like your blowpipe. If you have a synthetic blowpipe made out of Dilrin or some other plastic, if you have, and then you're putting it in maybe a split stock that's made out of Dilrin or some other synthetic plastic, it's fine. In emergencies, it's fine. But for long-term use, I would highly recommend that you do not use Teflon tape. Go to a single-ply hemp or re-hemp the joint till it's satisfied and locking in place. But I do carry Teflon tape in my kit because it does come in handy from time to time, but it's not my preferred method of setting up a joint.